Nick Saban, I said it at the opening, though. He's probably been retired for like 30 minutes or so, and he is already making his presence felt on the macro level when it comes to the college football world. Nick Saban's at a roundtable yesterday at Capitol Hill and made headlines when he said the things that I believed in as a coach for 50 years in this sport, those things no longer exist. And he's, of course, referring to the way that players are approaching NIL as opposed to how they used to maybe approach their development. Because Nick Saban, we understand this, his bread and butter is you're going to come to Alabama, you're going to compete hard, you're going to compete against the best of the best in practice, and by the end of your time here, whether it's 3 years, whether it's 4 years, you're going to be a better football player because of how we developed you, because of the time you spent at Alabama. And so what he's saying now is how that used to be the priority for most of these guys. Now the priority has shifted to, hey, what can you pay me? And he mentioned that it was mentioned rather in the Chris Lowe ESPN article, kind of chronicling Nick Saban's retirement and Kalen DeBoer being hired. How Nick Saban, they get back from the Rose Bowl and he's having NIL conversations with guys about, hey, how much are you going to pay me? How much are you going to pay me to stay at Alabama? And he's like, what are we doing here? We're not in it for football anymore. We're in it for getting a check. And so the other quote that he said that made some headlines was he was talking about essentially like in the NIL world today, and we all understand this is kind of how it's been, if you have the most money, if you raise the most money, you can afford the best players and give yourself the best opportunity to win. Nick Saban's not breaking news there, but because it was Nick Saban, it made more headlines because that's someone who's actually in the trenches of college football, who has seen the sausage made in that sense. And people are saying, whoa. Well, hey, the SEC, from what we've heard, what I read on message boards, everyone's been handing out bags of cash under the table for a while now. Okay, and Nick Saban, you're the one complaining about that? Let me be very clear. NIL has never, was never, and as long as Nick Saban was coaching college football, NIL was never going to hurt Alabama. Alabama was always going to be one of the haves in college football. Like I do not understand the thought that, oh, hey, Nick Saban, he's running from the times. He wasn't able to keep up in the NIL era. He couldn't stand the fact that the playing ground was being leveled because other folks were now paying recruits, because the perception, again, was, oh, all these SEC teams, they're handing out bags of cash. Whether that was the case or not isn't the point here. The point is that Alabama, again, was not going to be negatively impacted at a macro level on the NIL front. Because NIL at the base level, we talked about this on the show, it's about your care factor. How much you care about your football team to raise money, to give that money to your boosters or to your collectives or heck to your football program in some way, shape, or form, and then allow them to land the top players in the country. I promise you, Alabama, very engaged fan base, they would have been just fine. They will be just fine on the fundraising side of things. And don't just listen to me say that. Like look at the proof in the pudding there. The last couple of seasons, Alabama has been phenomenal in acquiring talent. In 2023, number 1 class in the country. In 2024, number 2 class in the country. So at the very least, they were putting together an attractive NIL opportunity for guys to come and play in Tuscaloosa. Alabama was never going to be hurt by the NIL era. Now, they may have lost a 5-star or 2 to another place that was able to offer more to a player. I'm not pretending that situation never occurred. But when we talk about Nick Saban, this is not Nick Saban being down on NIL and running from NIL. He's saying, I don't like the priorities that it created for our guys, that it created for our players in this game. And this is where I want to kind of interject a little bit and provide my opinion here. I don't think Nick Saban is talking about the kids having their priorities out of whack. I think what Nick Saban is speaking to here in a roundabout way is the adults in the room that help provide the priorities, right? Like at the end of the day, kids, they're 17 years old in high school, 18 years old. They get offered a check with a couple of zeros on it. Of course that's going to be what they see. Of course they're going to weigh that pretty heavily when it comes to what they're going to do with their college decision. They're 17-year-olds. Like, how are we blaming kids for being immature when they're immature to begin with by nature of the definition of what mature is? Like, we can't fault these 17-year-olds for wanting to make an NIL bag. Who I think we should fault here and who I think maybe needs to step up a little bit more here as NIL evolves is the adults in the room. The adults in the room have to step up here and say, hey, listen, that's great. You can make some money right now, but let's fast forward the tape here 4 or 5 years. Where do you want to be? You want to be in the NFL? You want to make that second contract kind of money, okay, well, that means that you have to lean into your development. It all kind of comes full circle. The landscape changes, the realities change as a recruit, but at the end of the day, the main thing is still the main thing. If making money is even your priority, let's say that that's all that matters to you. If that's what matters and making big-time money matters to you, NIL is great. The big money is going to come when you make the NFL. Like I just said, when you get that second contract in the league, that's where the payday is. And so the adults have to step up in the room here and say, that's nice that you're getting offered this, but let's lean into the development. Let's lean into the actual thing that got you offered that money in the first place. And so Nick Saban told a story how Miss Terry, his wife, would have breakfast on Sunday with the mother of the recruits, and she came to Saban and said, hey, why are we doing this? They just want to know what they're getting paid. Again, the adults in the room have to be the ones that step up here if we have issues with the priorities of these kids. So I'll tell you what, man, kids are very impressionable. They're very smart, but they're very impressionable. They get their priorities more than likely from the people that are the adults in the room or the ones telling them what their priorities should be. So Nick Saban is not anti-NIL. He has very clearly been pro-player from the start of this whole thing. He is pro-revenue sharing. He said that as well at the round table. Like, Nick Saban's pro-NIL. He's also pro having your priorities in place to give yourself the best future. So Nick Saban delivering truth serum. Surprise, surprise. The GOAT stepping in there and dropping some knowledge on us. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.